Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from the Spencer Family, Community Health System, Harris Ranch Resort, Producers Dairy, Valley Children's Healthcare, and The Wonderful Company. Additional support provided by from the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's public universities. This is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Blake Zanti.
Welcome to the Maddy Report. I'm Blake Zanti, Executive Director of the Maddy Institute. Today we'll be discussing Governor Newsom's plan to redraw California's election map through the redistricting process. Joined by us today is Alexei Koseff with CalMatters, Capitol reporter. Thanks for joining us, Alexei. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Happy to be with you.
Well, jumping right into our discussion, Governor Newsom began to advocate for redistricting after President Trump began pressuring Texas lawmakers to redraw congressional lines. How does Governor Newsom think California would be affected by keeping the current district lines?
So Governor Newsom has really put what he's doing in California into this national context. It's not just about California anymore. It's about responding to Texas, and it's about responding to President Trump. He's basically making the argument that by redistricting Texas to pick up about 5 more Republican seats, President Trump could be putting control of Congress out of the hands of Democrats in 2026. And that would take away the ability for Democrats to put a check on President Trump's agenda and potentially allow him to, slide the country further into authoritarianism. That's his argument. So he's making the case to Democrats here in California that this is a necessary reaction, that California needs to go and fight fire with fire, pick up more Democratic seats here in California, and give Democrats a chance of taking back control of Congress next year.
And in what ways do we see state and local leaders getting engaged in the process, including the governor and legislators, trying to raise awareness with voters about this early redistricting proposal?
I mean, this has been such a big story. It's been a much, much bigger story than almost anything that I feel like I've covered in my more than a decade writing about California politics. People just feel the meaningfulness of this moment. And so you're seeing Democrats activating, trying to sort of make this argument about fighting back against Trump, and they're getting people involved at all levels. But Republicans as well really see this as an existential moment for their party in California. The way the maps could be redrawn, Republicans are already a very small minority of the congressional delegation in California, and they could lose more than half of the remaining seats that they hold. So if this goes through, they could be down to as few as 4 seats in California's 52-member delegation. I mean, that's basically non-existent. That's like non-representation in Washington, D.C. And so they're really trying to get the word out to people in conservative communities all across the state that this has profound consequences for your voice at a federal level.
And now, Democrats already had a map drawn before introducing ACA 8. Still, the new congressional map isn't finalized. If early redistricting is approved by California voters, who will oversee, really the implementation of this new map, and what safeguards will be in place against, gerrymandering? Or are we already too far down the road at this point?
Well, what I would say is this is gerrymandering. So there's not really any safeguards against it, because what is happening here is the Democrats saying, we are going to go full bore into gerrymandering for the purpose of trying to have more equal representation across the country. California is in this very unique position. It has an independent redistricting commission approved by voters. It has sort of stayed out of that fray of the partisan fights that we see in a lot of other states every 10 years as they try and draw districts to gain, an advantage here and there. And what we're seeing now is that Governor Newsom and other Democrats are asking voters to set that system aside, to override the power of the Independent Redistricting Commission for the next few years, and to put in place these maps that will heavily favor Democrats.
Thank you. Up next, we'll discuss what voters will expect for this special election and how redistricting will affect California. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking about California's redistricting with Alexei Koseff from CalMatters. Californians can begin voting on redistricting very soon on November 4th. Vote by mail ballots will begin being mailed out by October 6th, I believe. And for Voters' Choice Act counties, early in-person voting starts on October 25th. With the election coming up, I want to talk a little bit more about how this special election will affect California. Which districts or regions are probably the most likely to be affected by this potential ballot measure that could be passed by voters?
So this new map is really going to have a profound impact for millions of California voters, because overall, what it aims to do is flip the partisan control of 5 seats from Republican to Democratic, and then shore up Democratic voter registration in 5 more swing districts, and essentially take those off the map of competitiveness and keep them in the Democratic column. So voters in the far northern part of California who are currently represented by a Republican could end up being represented by a Democrat. Voters in the Central Valley who are used to very competitive races that come down to a few percentage points could suddenly see themselves in these heavily Democratic districts. Voters in Orange County who are used to swing district races could also see the same thing.
Should we anticipate significant changes to district boundaries in the San Joaquin Valley and also the Sierra Nevada foothills?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the main targets for this effort is Representative David Valadao, who's represented a district for many years in the San Joaquin Valley. He's been a target of Democrats cycle after cycle because he manages to hold on as a Republican in a district that has more Democratic voters than Republicans, I think, which speaks to his connection in the community. But the way the new boundaries are drawn, it's pulling in some more Democratic voters and taking out some Republican voters. And Democrats are hoping this is finally their chance, if this map is approved, to take David Valadao out of power in Washington.
Now, if Proposition 50 is approved, how would this affect the California Citizens Redistricting Commission over the next several election cycles?
Yeah, I mean, California's in this really unique place compared to a lot of other states. Most states put the power to draw districts in the hands of the state legislature, but California voters 15 years ago approved this Citizen Redistricting Commission that creates this bipartisan, nonpartisan process for creating the districts, and that would be set aside for the next 3 election cycles under Proposition 50. It would put this map in place instead until after the 2030 census, which is the next regular round of redistricting.
Talking about the opponents, I want to shift focus to the other side of the conversation before we wrap up. What would hypothetically happen if Proposition 50 is not approved by voters? How do Governor Newsom and other legislators really believe this would affect California's influence and representation? And what are the implications in the upcoming midterm election for Democrats and Republicans?
Yeah, I mean, if this is not approved, from an electoral standpoint, not much would change. California would proceed next year with the same congressional map that it currently has. From a political perspective, though, it could be a profound statement by California voters rejecting something that's a huge priority of Governor Newsom, sort of kneecapping his political power at this moment when he's trying to gain national prominence and potentially run for president. And it would also be, a real rejection of this anti-Trump message that Democrats have used to appeal to voters in California for almost a decade now. So it's unclear right now which way the vote will go. There's a very limited amount of public polling, but certainly it's going to be very interesting to see if this is successful or not, and by what margin. Are a lot of voters really moving in lockstep for and against this thing, or is it going to be a very tight race down to the end?
Well, Alexei Koseff with CalMatters, thank you so much for joining us back on the program. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for having me on.
Great. And we'll be right back after this break. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back to the Maddy Report. We're now joined by Blake Jones, co-author of Politico's California Playbook. The first proposed maps of the new congressional districts were created in hopes of countering the new Texas congressional map. With this, I want to talk a little bit more about what this means for the representatives in their current districts. There are already some Republican leaders that know their districts will shift towards a Democratic advantage. Blake, thanks for joining us. Maybe if we could just start off, how does this change the way Republican leaders will campaign during the next election, especially in a Democratic-heavy district that may be shifting?
Yeah, so the intention of the Democrats who drew these maps was to target 5 incumbent Republican House members. It centrally, assuming Prop 50 passes, will, change the way that they campaign, because some of these longtime incumbents who have been in relatively safe seats for a number of years are all of a sudden going to be in districts that have a Democratic voter registration advantage. And that is going to, A, require them and their donors to spend a lot more money trying to protect their seats. But B, it means they're going to have to spend a lot more time on the trail that many of them are accustomed to doing. So there's that. The other thing is that it's a possibility that some Republicans who are being targeted could either retire or try to run in other districts that are less Democratic and more advantaged for Republicans. I think about Doug LaMalfa up in Northern California is, definitely on retirement watch, I think, as his district is being targeted. You also think about somebody like Ken Calvert in the Inland Empire, whose district would be changed significantly, and he could end up running a primary challenge against fellow Republican Young Kim in order to continue running for a district that is leaning Republican.
Now, the new map is also expected to ease maybe some of the tight races seen during the 2024 election for Democrats. With that added pressure lifted, what strategies or priorities should we expect from Democrat leaders moving forward?
I think you're going to see a significant change in how Democratic leaders prioritize where they're spending as a result. But I do think that they're still going to have to put a lot of energy and focus into some of these races that were maybe considered, extreme frontline kind of photo finish races last cycle. If you think about, somebody like a Dave Min in Orange County who was able to pull off a fairly close race, and some other Democrats, they're still going to have relatively tight contests, even if their districts have gotten a little bit safer. So I think that there is still going to have to be a lot of energy from the party put toward these races. And now they have more races that they need to focus on, because they not only need to flip these 5 seats to carry out their goals, but also spend the money and time that they were already going to spend protecting these incumbents.
Maybe to that point a little bit, some solidly blue seats are being reshaped into more competitive purple districts to strengthen Democratic advantages elsewhere. How does this trade-off really factor into Democrats' broader strategy of trying to pick up 5 seats? I know you sort of mentioned this just now, but if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So, yeah, there are a few members like that who saw their registration advantage take a haircut. I think about somebody like Robert Garcia in the Long Beach area, who is going to, see his district shift a few points. Most of those people are still safe, but I think that this is going to result in them needing to spend more time in the district on the weekends, quite frankly, and out and about, time that they might have otherwise spent in DC to ensure that they have things locked up.
Well, we'll certainly see politicians maybe in new areas that we haven't seen them before with these new districts. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back to wrap up our conversation with Blake Jones. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Blake, thanks again for joining us on the program today. Before you go, I want to pick up where we left off in our last segment, talking a little bit about how Democratic leaders hope to pick up 5 seats to offset this greater initiative that's being done in Texas. Still drawing a map that establishes districts that lean Democratic doesn't necessarily guarantee that outcome. Maybe what are some of the other dynamics and factors that may enable Republicans to maintain influence in some of the areas where they already have control or they already represent?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we should back up and say that the main strategy for maintaining influence is going to be defeating Proposition 50 and avoiding mid-decade redistricting from the outset. This is not a sure thing that Prop 50 is going to pass. We have seen some internal polling from both sides, and as is often the case from internal polling, the no side's polling looks better for the no side, and the yes side's polling looks better for the yes side. But either way, I think that we expect this to be a pretty competitive ballot measure race. So that is certainly Republicans' first priority. We've even seen some of these incumbent members who would be imperiled if Prop 50 passes. They've focused a lot of their public statements on campaigning against Prop 50 and even sometimes not acknowledging what their plans might look like after it passes, if it does so. So that's, one thing. The other is that I think you're going to continue to see some of these Republicans tap into more national fundraising networks because they have a new argument to make about why they need resources from outside of California, because California has been pivotal in control of the House in so many recent cycles. Even though Democrats were able to pick up some seats, here last cycle, obviously they didn't take control of the House, but I think that they'll have an even stronger pitch to make when there are, so many close and flippable seats at hand.
I think that's an important qualifier that you noted. Really, all of this does hinge on the passage of Proposition 50, which I know both sides are going to be heavily focusing on in this upcoming special election. In some of your recent reporting, you also highlight the possible rematch of certain, members, incumbents, and then also challengers that they faced previously, Representative Darrell Issa and then Amar Kampa-Nahar. What other rematches are being anticipated? Are we going to see a lot of the same rematches maybe we did last time, even with these new districts? And how will the passage of Proposition 50 really affect that outcome?
Yeah, in fact, I think most of these races I think are not going to involve rematches. There is the case for Darrell Issa's district, but that race has at least 9 Democrats that I know of who are challenging Darrell Issa, which is another problem that is faced for the Democratic Party as they try to flip these seats, is that in most of these races, the party has not consolidated support for one candidate over another. I also think about somebody like David Valadao, who is, in the Central Valley, and in the Democratic challenge to him, which will probably look similar whether Prop 50 passes or not. You have a moderate assembly member in Jasmeet Bains, who is more friendly to the oil industry, versus Randy Villegas, a school board trustee who's more progressive, has support from the Working Families Party, and has taken some shots against Assemblymember Bains already over some of her more moderate positions and comments that she made in the past, that were less critical of David Valadao than he would have pushed for. So I think that one of the keys for the Democrats here is going to be, I think there's going to have to be a certain point at which, somebody in the party or somebody at some of these endorsing groups is going to feel the need to put their thumb on the scale in some pretty serious ways to avoid a messy intra-party fight. And, in addition to those 2 races, we also have this La Malfa seat that could, that we could see, or a new, I should specify, there's also a new seat being created in Northern California that would be heavily Democratic. And, I wouldn't expect that to be a rematch, including if the incumbent retires and if Mike McGuire, the outgoing leader of the state Senate here, runs as he is reportedly considering doing, then we could see a lot of new, fresh faces coming from this total redraw.
Well, Blake Jones, co-author of Politico's California Playbook, thank you so much for joining us today on the Maddy Report. Really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into the Maddy Report. To learn more about the Maddy Institute, visit themaddyinstitute.org. What makes a community thrive? How do we bridge the gap between government and policy and the people it impacts? The Maddy Institute was founded to answer questions like these, to create a link between government and the citizens it serves, and to inspire a new generation of leaders dedicated to public service. In 1999, the California legislature unanimously established the Maddy Institute in honor of former California State Senator Kenneth L. Maddy. Senator Maddy was widely respected for his commitment to bipartisan solutions and his dedication to the people of California's Central Valley. Known for his ability to work across the aisle, Senator Maddy believed that effective government begins with respectful dialogue, evidence-based policy, and a commitment to the common good. Today, the Maddy Institute continues his legacy. Our mission is threefold. 1, to promote more effective and inclusive government. 2, to encourage civic engagement. And 3, to conduct research on key issues impacting the Central Valley. Through these efforts, we aim to educate, inspire, and empower the next generation of public servants and community leaders. One of the most impactful ways we fulfill this mission is through our internship programs. Each year, the Maddy Institute provides opportunities for students from the Central Valley to work in legislative offices, both in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., as well as local government agencies. These internships give students real-world experience in policymaking, allow them to see government in action, and help them build the skills they need to make a difference in their communities. But the Maddy Institute isn't just for students. Through our civic engagement programs, we create opportunities for everyone to participate in the political process. From community forums to workshops, we bring people together to discuss important issues facing the Central Valley, like water management, air quality, economic development, and education. These events foster open dialogue, allowing citizens to engage directly with policymakers, experts, and others, creating a stronger and more informed community. And to ensure the public stays informed, the Maddy Institute produces the Maddy Report, a weekly public affairs broadcast that covers the latest issues impacting California. Each episode features interviews with lawmakers, journalists, and subject matter experts, providing insights and analysis on topics that matter to our region. Whether it's understanding new legislation or exploring solutions to local challenges, the Maddy Report is a trusted source of information for those who want to stay engaged. At the heart of everything we do is a belief that good governance requires an informed and engaged public. From nurturing young leaders to fostering dialogue, the Maddy Institute is dedicated to creating a future where the people of the Central Valley can thrive. Join us as we continue Senator Maddy's legacy. Together, we can build a brighter future, one informed and engaged citizen at a time. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.com.